Welcome to today's episode where we discuss the most recent installments of a different series every show. Whether you're tuning in as a fan of Exploding Kittens, the board game, or the television show, or you're curious about what's new on TV, you're in the right place. We've done a lot of animation series recently, Wandla, Sausage Party, now this. Something that I found in common with all of them is it's about a character who sets off on an adventure on Earth, right? Wandla was like a girl who had been kind of
kept underground
for her entire life and had to break out into Earth to see the rest of the planet. Obviously, there's not a lot of humans there. Sausage Party,
they left the
killed
store.
all the humans,
yeah,
but they leave the store and now they're off on the world. God is in heaven in Exploding Kittens, and he is transformed into a cat because the board in heaven thinks that he's doing a bad job and that he needs to get grounded again and like kind of learn the ways of humanity and learn to love his people.
Did you recognize who voiced God?
Well, no, I knew who voiced God. It was the guy from who played the devil.
Lucifer.
Yes.
Tom Ellis.
Lucifer. Yes. And I know he knows how to sing. And so I was waiting for him to have a singing moment. He didn't in the first episode. But I also recognized, more importantly, Colin Robinson.
Yes, of course.
As his voice
Marv
is about as like recognizable as anybody's from what we do in the shadows. What's his real name?
Mark Prox.
All right, yeah. Anyways, so there's a lot of shows you can compare this thing to. Miracle Workers, Has Been Hotel, Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. Also because Puss in Boots has the eyeballs, the same eyeballs, where, you know, they go big and they make but that's this thing all the whole time. Remember when we did Sunny?
Right,
robot series, that robot had the same type of anime eyeballs and it worked for it. And so like, yeah, there's that. Puss in Boots also has to go through a journey of like relearning that he's not just immune to everything.
Right.
I think he's in his 9th life.
He's on his last life, right?
Has Been Hotel. It's about this journey for this girl who is this person who's in hell, the daughter of the devil, right?
Charlie Morningstar, right?
Yes. And she is trying to work out a deal with heaven so that they stop attacking hell and in a way kind of like learn more about her own life. Miracle Workers also took place in heaven, right? And it was about how the angels were so distant and like far off. I guess that's also the connection with Has Been Hotel, where the angels no longer really act human at all. They don't have that emotion. They don't feel compelled to act with empathy.
In
right?
Miracle Workers, God is a giant douche,
yes,
too.
And God is sort of a douche here. So that's why they send him back as God Cat, because they feel like he's become too full of himself, too lazy. Remember Violent Night? The Santa thing?
Yeah.
They do this with Santa a lot, where they kind of make him curmudgeon-y and annoyed after a while. Like he's been doing it for hundreds of years and he finally gets so cynical that he's just had it.
Well,
right?
it's taking the children's innocence and then making that character just dark and twisted.
But then by the end of those shows or movies, they always have Santa kind of like relearn the spirit of Christmas.
Right.
That's kind of what God Cat's supposed to do. He's supposed to come to Earth and through the Higgins family, come to love humans again. And then at the very end of this episode, he sort of goes through the first steps of that. The angels show up. 2 of the board angels show up and say, you haven't done enough.
I have here an eternal conflict reaches epic proportions when both God and the devil are sent to Earth in the bodies of chunky house cats.
That's a whole series overview. None of that is discussed here. It's literally just about sending. Remember Cars?
Yes.
Yes. What happens? Lightning McQueen gets full of himself. He thinks he's better than everybody. He ends up breaking down like in a town or like destroying a town.
Yeah, far off.
And then he's stuck in that jail sort of there, having to like rework personalities and he's trying to find the right route in life and find that empathy. Same thing with the God here. He shows up back on Earth and he's just completely full of himself. And so he's doing the thing Thor does too. When he shows up, it's a lot of repetitive things.
I was going to say,
a lot of cliches.
It reminds me also of the Sacha Baron Cohen movie, The Dictator, where it's like the dictator, he's very powerful, then goes to New York, realizes that no one really recognizes who he is, and through that kind of...
it's a very common trope.
Yes.
And I think it actually probably has a name in writing, like that type of story, right? But those were the shows that it initially reminded me of. And then I took into account that I'm always the one who's saying we should be making more television shows based off of video games. Now, does that apply to board games? Because you look at Arcane, you look at Last of Us, you look at the Cuphead show. The Cuphead show is an app. And I know that Exploding Kittens isn't just a board game. It is also an app. So whether or not this qualifies because of the amount of lore and practice that's gone behind it, whether that would translate into a good television program is what I was going into this series trying to figure out.
Well, everyone knows the classic board game to film adaptations. Clue, Jumanji, Dungeons and Dragons. I think you could rope the 90s version, but also even the new one into there. Battleship, maybe not for the reason that it wants to be a classic. You may even know about Monopoly, set to star
Wait, you're
Margot
calling
Robbie.
Battleship a classic?
I think in the years to come, it will have a so good it's bad legacy to it.
I think
But
it exists in a medium with so many other cheap looking fighting movies, action movies in the 2010s that like it's just going
when
to
you
go.
look back at
You're gonna
Mortal
forget about it.
Kombat in the 90s, I mean, like that is a Mortal Kombat, I
Yeah,
think,
but
the
that was at the
Annihilation.
time when there were less movies like that. In the 2010s, there was like a dime a dozen with these like superhero or giant robot movies, you know,
Well, in
Transformers.
development right now, there's a Monopoly movie set to star Margot Robbie and will be directed by Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott has been trying to get this movie made for like 16
It's
years.
funny because when we did Raised by Wolves, he had been trying to make that TV show for a really long time too.
But let's talk about some of the films based on board games that were never made despite attempts to. I actually have a game here. One of these is fake, three of them are real. Are you ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so the first one is Relativity Media and Peyton Reed, director of The Mandalorian and all three Ant-Man movies, collab to try and make Trouble. As of 2024, the film has not come to fruition.
True or false?
That's just the first one. The second one is Candyland, a film that was in talks with Sony Pictures and Adam Sandler's Happy Madison Productions. Third one is John Hlavin, writer for The Shield, Blood Drive, Shooter, and The Man Who Fell to Earth, and Columbia Pictures were developing an action thriller set in the Cold War based off and by the name of Risk. And the fourth one is Simon Kinberg, creator of Invasion, executive producer of Legion, writer of X-Men Days of Future Past, tried developing a Magic the Gathering movie with 20th Century Fox. So
Okay,
which
so
one of these
just
is fake?
so there's Magic the Gathering, and then name the other Candyland,
Risk, Candyland,
then
and Trouble.
Trouble. Um, I've never heard of Trouble, but I know that like I think that's real. I think it's the last one that you said. The Last of Us one is that the fake one?
Magic the Gathering?
Magic
That
the
one?
Gathering?
No, that's one that's actually real. They tried to make it back in 2014. They tried to make Candyland back in 2012.
So it is the Adam Sandler?
They tried to make Risk back in 2011. It was actually Trouble that was
so it is
fake.
Trouble. So it is like that one I never heard of before, but I thought like you wouldn't make up a
Well,
board game.
Trouble is a real game.
Yeah, but it's like not a famous. That should have been a dead giveaway, I think. Yeah. Okay.
But going back to the card game, as you were describing, Ellen Lee, he was fed up with being a video game developer at Microsoft. And then Matthew Inman, who was the creator of this show, had an idea based off his girlfriend's cats, or a girlfriend that he dated back when in his early 20s, one that behaved like God and one that behaved like the Antichrist. And then while on a cruise ship, Ellen Lee heard about this and he was like, you know what, we should make a Kickstarter with the idea that they would hit a goal of $10,000 back in 2015. And then in 30 days, with over 200,000 backers, Exploding Kittens raised $8.7 million on Kickstarter, being the fourth most successful Kickstarter in history of all time at the time.
It's a catchy name, isn't it?
It became super successful. The first playtest of Exploding Kittens was given to Smosh Games, and they filmed the video playing the game. And then multiple investors came throughout the years. However, there was a special person, Peter Chernin. He had his own company, and he said...
Do you want to explain what the game actually does, though? Because from what I understand, it's like it's a basic card game, and you collect things, and it's kind of like Uno or Go, where like you get to advance, but you're trying to stop people from from doing like you can steal people's cards, right?
Right.
And what is the ultimate goal of the game? Just to be the last one to survive, right? Because if you pick a card that says I've exploded or exploding
kittens, you
then
lose.
you're out.
Yes.
So it's basically just a survival game until the end.
Yes,
All
exactly. And then Peter Chernin came and he said, you know what, you should franchise this. And then they were like, you know what, we're going to make a TV show about it. It took a little tiny pitch that Ellen Lee made, and they already were signing a deal with Netflix. At one point, they were even thinking to themselves, you know what, can we get Greg Daniels and Mike Judge, the people from The Office and Office Space, to make this thing? They were having dinner with them the next week.
Really?
That's part of the reason why they're executive producer on this. It took them 4 years to make. They had a little trouble with casting. They were floating out names like Peter Dinklage to Robert Downey Jr. to play the God Cat. But after writing everything and after writing the 9 episodes, they said that the process became a little easier. Does Exploding Kittens work?
So you want to just jump right into ratings?
Yep.
I think that this deserves a 5 out of 10, which for my level of rating, it just means run of the mill.
But
right?
it doesn't pass.
There's well, again, the pass and fail. It's 5 out of 10, meaning it's is perfectly fine if you want to watch this show, but there's a billion other shows like it out there right now, a billion other cartoons. Central Park, Captain Fall, TV's Jason Ritter is in that. Crapopolis, Agent Elvis. They're all like mediocre shows. Some of them are on Netflix. None of them like stick out as things that you have to watch. And the problem with like this is that you get a lot of like basic comedy, like is it a GIF or is it a GIF? They're asking Godcat
Right.
because obviously he would know. So you get those kind of corny things. But then you got also there are a couple funny moments, so you are bound to laugh more than it's not terrible. That's what I'm trying to get at. And it just feels like my ratings are going to go lower and lower the more of these shows that we get.
I do realize that with even the ones that you were just naming, especially on Netflix, I can't think of one of these animated shows, even if the animation is good. Like I remember I liked Agent Elvis, but I can't think of one that really, really stuck
Like
out.
Arcane and the Cuphead show, they really do separate themselves, but they have different plots. They're not relying on the same old. This could be The Good Place. This could be Bruce Almighty. This could be a little bit Ted. Godcat reminds
Really.
me a lot of Ted, like his backhanded remarks. Obviously, Ted is a little bit more
Always
sarcastic.
the snooty character, always the snooty main character.
And I think what's his face, Lucifer voices him well. Salem as the cat. I mean,
Yeah.
there's obviously the connection there. But God's being smug is nothing new. We've seen it from Zeus to Thor. Like I said, Old Santa, even Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Jake Johnson's character, Spider-Man,
Right.
right? He's the one who got a little bit too like tired and like what would you
I
say?
mean, he's taking care of the baby.
No. Into the Spider-Verse, the first
Oh, the first one?
where he's introduced.
He
he's
got
in a
out of
universe-
shape. He's depressed.
He's depressed and he's kind of just like cynical, right?
Yes.
And that's what happens with a lot of heroes. And they then have to like they either become obsessed with themselves or they just lose their way.
Well, you've seen Lucifer, right? You've seen
Yeah.
part of the show. Would you say that Tom Ellis is just kind of like his Godcat character here?
No, they're completely different characters.
They are?
It's funny though, when he first comes to Earth and he's like a fat cat, his first thing is like, "Where's my washboard abs?" Like, so you get those type of jokes.
He ad-libbed a lot of his lines, like 50 to 60%. The creator said.
Yeah, I did find some cool things in the show. My favorite joke was probably the mantis shrimp because the mantis shrimp runs around and and it's like this killing monster, and God apparently that was like his favorite creature to make. And then they talk about toxoplasmosis, which I don't hear a lot of shows talking about because it's that weird parasite that most or a lot of cats have that can end up spreading to humans. Do you want to know some facts about toxoplasmosis?
Yeah, sure.
Because they're very interesting. They first infected mice, and what they do to mice is they cause them to want to go up to cats, like get allured to cats or like attracted to cats.
That's right.
So that the cats will eat them. No,
Right.
it's not strange. It's just like cordyceps.
Well, it's almost like a
virus
suicide
in-
mission.
It's the virus in or the bacteria or the parasite that's in the mushrooms that's causing the ants to go up the tree or whatever and get eaten and then spread the disease that way.
Mhm.
Or in Last of Us, the zombie
Right.
virus, right? You are more likely to have a road traffic accident if you have been infected with toxoplasmosis.
The thing I
And
thought,
like 30%, I think, of people have it, maybe even more.
so people
so-
do have it, because I thought with The Last of Us, and I remember that interview took place in the 60s, they were saying that something like that did not exist, and then in like
Well, they weren't talking
day.
about this parasite. They were talking about the mushroom stuff.
Right, okay.
Yes, this is specific to the cat stuff and the cat feces and everything and how you can get affected. But I found it stunning that people's brains can be affected enough where they are more likely to get into traffic accidents, have OCD, like 2.5 times percent more likely to have obsessive compulsive disorder if they have toxoplasmosis in their brain. And also, people who have it are less put off by cat urine. Isn't that weird?
So they can handle it better. That
So,
it
like,
doesn't annoy them.
The reason I'm saying all these facts is because, again, the show doesn't offer too much to talk about. Yes, you have the family. He kind of does, the Godcat does a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids moment where he brings all four of them down in size to have to fight this D&D program board game that the father has made in order to bond. There's Abby, who is the mom. She's going against gender stereotypes by being the ex-Navy SEAL animal catcher. She's all about the action. She wants
Abby Higgins. Yeah.
Yes. There's Marv, who's D&D obsessed. He's balding and he's obsessed dork dad. He also reminds me a lot of Koala Man from that series, but I would say Koala Man's a better series. Greta is the genius Lisa Simpson character, and so she immediately says that the reason why the cat is smart is because of the toxoplasmosis, and she's the one who wants to be able to impress her science fair, and that's why they bring out the shrimp that I was talking about earlier. And then Travis is this struggling streamer who's there just to make TikTok jokes and complain about how his mukbangs are doing well.
Feels like boomer humor.
A certain dynamic. I think he said he had like one older gentleman who was like very interested in his mukbangs.
Why is it that that's always the same joke?
Yeah.
I know that the creator, Matthew Inman, he's most famous for making the internet comic The Oatmeal. I think it started back in 2008. It was just a lot of like different
Oatmeal?
Yeah, it was a lot of different comics, but mostly they revolved around kind of the monster characters. I'm sure that
same as Has Been Hotel, the Vivzy person, like she started off with the devil creature, and so I wouldn't be surprised if they probably started off with the devil cat, but we don't see the devil cat until the very end when Godcat learns that he has to stay on Earth, and then he looks down and he sees Sashir Zameda.
I assume that you're probably not going to watch the rest of the series.
It says The Oatmeal is a webcomic and humor website created in 2009, cartoonist Matthew Inman, like you said. I'm trying to figure out what it is, though, like, because is it about oatmeal, or is it like...
no, The Oatmeal was just the name for it.
Meets infographics. Okay, yeah, so I'm seeing like a picture of like gremlins eating CPUs. This is very strange. Yeah. So
well, that's where the
same
humor,
guy who
yeah.
made the kitten stuff.
Yes.
Kittens Explode. Are they going to make a sequel to the game, the board game?
I don't think so.
Okay, so it's basically just about like it's kind of like with Limetown when they first made that podcast, and you were like, I want to see more seasons of this, and instead they just focused on doing television.
Again, the advice they got was to franchise it, which I could see how you would think they would make a sequel to it, but they were even talking about theme parks.
It just reminds me too much of Angry Birds in that way. Like the failure of trying to make such a big thing out of a tiny game. I'm not saying this is the same thing. It does have its moments. The puns are there. The sausage party puns. Remember how they didn't like those? Instead of Cantonese, it's Catanese. Instead of abracadabra, it's catdabra. Instead of Travis, he mispronounces Travis's name, the young kid, as Trash Fist. And then get it, Heaven's Board, like board game. I don't know if that was even intentional, but I found it funny.
The show has mixed reviews. Yeah. It has a 6.7 on IMDb, 67% on Rotten Tomatoes, but you have places like The Guardian that gave the series 1 out of 5 stars. AV Club gave the season a C-. But then you have the Daily Beast saying, though the story fumbles, this is still an exceptionally funny show that maintains the irreverent, silly, and often shocking humor of comics.
Yeah, well, it's the most shocking humor, like the Ted-ish humor type thing.
Right.
I think the most Ted moment would have been when Godcat made a dig at Steven Spielberg, because he was talking about like even the best don't like everything that they've done. Like Steven Spielberg, you don't think he ever plops on Warhorse and watches that. I mean, it was an okay joke in the time. And
you have LA Times, which did a duo review, and they said that with Sausage Party, and they said Exploding Kittens is actually funnier, and that they would recommend that one over Sausage Party.
Over Sausage Party, maybe because the humor is different. Like Sausage Party is literally just about sex and food having sex. This has a lot more, I think, references of other stuff. Like when the cat had to escape the animal shelter, he became a Power Ranger cat. Like he controlled all the other cats to form into like a human. Reminded me of Rick and Morty season 1 with the dog. Busted out of there. Like I said, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. At one point, the angels say to him, save your family, save yourself, right? So he can get back to becoming God. Save the cheerleader, save the world. It's just heroes. So yeah, tons of stuff you could compare this thing to. You know where it's going. It's very basic. If you're into that type of show and you're just looking for something to watch, then go ahead and check it out. There's 9 episodes on Netflix. Pretty short to get through.
All of them are around 25 minutes.
Yeah, just don't expect to be too impressed. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.